Hello and welcome to the official YouTube channel of Anastasis Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ananya B. Chatterjee and I welcome all of you to Maverick Mastery Cat 2024 episode 7. This is a guided practice on most anticipated question types for VARC. Today we are going to look at an RC which is based on literature. So let's get started. Let's first of all try to understand the passage to the best of our abilities. 1 second. Shaw's defense. Shaw means, I think, the great author George Bernard Shaw. Quite a witty person and a prolific author and thinker. Shaw's defense of a theater of ideas brought him up against both his great bugbears. Bugbears means things that cause fear. So my bugbear is another pandemic, like that. Commercialized art on the one hand, and art for art's sake on the other hand. So what does it mean? So when Shaw defended his theater of ideas, he had to deal with two opposing factors. One was commercialized art, art that is made for money, and art for art's sake, art that is made for art only. So the final goal is creating the art. His teaching is that beauty is a byproduct of other activity. That's what he teaches. That the artist writes out of moral passion, not out of love of art. He always felt that the artist writes out of moral passion because he has to write, not because he loves art. That the pursuit of art for its own sake is a form of self-indulgence as bad as any other sort of sensuality. So he compared people who wrote for art's sake. He compared it to being sensually indulged with a goal in mind. It's not happening involuntarily, naturally. In the end, the errors of pure art and of commercialized art are identical. He thinks that both ways it's a slippery slope. They both appeal primarily to the senses. This is where these two things are similar. True art, on the other hand, which is neither commercial nor for art's sake, is not merely a matter of pleasure. It may be unpleasant. A favorite Shavian, Shavian as in given by G.B. Shaw. No. Like Gandhi becomes Gandhian, G.B. Shaw becomes Shavian. A Shavian metaphor comparison for the function of the arts is that of tooth pulling by a dentist. Even if the patient is under laughing gas, the tooth is still pulled. The history of aesthetics affords more examples of a didactic than of a hedonist view. Didactic is instructive. People who are in my batch, they may know that these two words have been given already in the vocab list. Hedonist is pleasure seeking. Pleasure seeking. The history of aesthetics, beauty, affords more examples of a didactic, instructive, rather than of a pleasurable view. But Shaw's didacticism, instructiveness, takes an unusual turn in its application to the history of arts. If, as Shaw holds, ideas are a most important part, the most important part of a work of art, and if he also holds ideas go out of date, it follows that even the best works of art go out of date. A leads to B leads to C. That means A leads to C, right? Best of the works also go out of date in some important respects, and that the generally held view that great works are in all respects eternal is not shared by Shaw. He doesn't feel that great work of art is always eternal and timeless. In the preface to 3 plays for Puritans, Puritans are the people who are extremely sanctimonious about the purity of something. Purity of language, purity of religion, purity of race, like that. He maintains that renewal in the arts means renewal in philosophy. But the first great artist who comes along after a renewal gives to the new philosophy full and final form. So The G.B. Shaw, he feels that when a person is trying to transcend art, it is through the renewal of philosophy also. That the first great artist who comes along after a renewal gives to the new philosophy full and final form. That is the person who actually is the change agent. That subsequent artists, after the change agent, though even more gifted, can do nothing but refine upon the master without matching him. A lot of people came after Shakespeare who tried to write like Shakespeare, but they couldn't. Like that. Shaw, whose essential modesty, humbleness, is as disarming as his pose of vanity is disconcerting. Shaw is modest also, and he is vain also. And it's disconcerting, it's unsettling. Assigns to himself the role not of the master, but of the pioneer, the role of a Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe is another author, rather than of a Shakespeare. Shakespeare would have come into the picture. He doesn't think of himself as a master. He thinks of himself as a pioneer, somebody who initiates change. The whirligig of time, cyclical nature, will soon bring my audiences to my own point of view. He's not going to change with the audience. The audience has to change according to him. He writes, and then the next Shakespeare that comes along will turn these petty tentatives of mine into masterpieces final for their epoch. So he feels that I'm just going to work on my point of view, and somebody as skilled as Shakespeare would come and take up my ideas, tentative ideas, and create them into magnum opus, like masterpieces. Final for their epoch as in era, time, context. Not every work of art is relevant to every era, just like that. Even Shakespearean masterpieces are not final beyond that. No one says Shaw will ever write a better tragedy than Lear, or a better opera than Don Giovanni, or a better music drama than During News Nibelungen. But just as essential to play as this aesthetic merit is more relevant, moral relevance, which if we take a naturalistic and historical view of morals, it loses or partly loses in time. What does it mean? He says that a lot of things were final. They were so perfect that nothing could have been better than that. But just as essential to play as this aesthetic merit is moral relevance, which if we take a natural and historical view of morals, it loses or partly loses in time. Like I was saying, not everything is equally relevant. So King Lear may be a masterpiece, but you will not be able to relate to it because it was written a couple of centuries ago. Right? Like that. Shaw, who has the courage of his historicism, consistently withstands the view that moral problems do not change and argues, therefore, that for us, modern literature and music form a Bible surpassing in significance the Hebrew Bible. What does it mean? Shaw, who has the courage of his historicism, he accepts history, consistently withstands the view that moral problems do not change and argues, therefore, that for us, modern literature and music form a Bible surpassing in significance the Hebrew Bible, which actually happened. The Hebrew Bible was surpassed by the Christian Bible, you know. That is Shaw's anticipatory challenge to the neo orthodoxy of today. It's a pretty difficult passage to understand. Let's look at the questions one by one. The first question asks us the primary purpose of the passage is to discuss. Now, the unorthodoxy of Shaw's views on the Bible, he was not unorthodox about the Bible. He just gave an example that a Hebrew Bible might be succeeded by another Bible, just like it will happen in art. So this is not true. The aesthetic merit of Shaw's plays not been talked about. Not been talked about. The history of aesthetics was talked about. Shavian examples of theater of ideas, no. Examples would mean more than one example, which not been given. But Shaw's theory of art. In all the three paragraphs, you would see that the author sticks to his understanding of George Bernard Shaw's way of looking at things, right? That's question number 1. So the second question asks us, the author sets off the word pure with quotation marks in order to do what? Here, in the end, the errors of pure art and of commercialized art are identical. They both appeal primarily to the senses true art. So to show a contrast it with the word true, which appears later. Rest of the options do not really make sense. It's not about commercialization. It's not about highlighting. It's not about negative connotations, nothing like that. In this question, we have been asked, according to the author, Shaw compares art to tooth pulling in order to show what? True art, on the other hand, is not merely a matter of pleasure. And then the tooth pulling comparison comes into play. So, art may not always be pleasurable. So, fourth, it's not about being painful. That was just a metaphor, right? It's not about best works, too extreme. It's not about moral relevance either. So, whenever you have a question like this, try to read the previous sentence and the next sentence, and you would come to the right understanding and the correct answer. According to the author, Shaw's didacticism, instructiveness, was unusual in that it was characterized by, what is the answer? Didactic, but unusual turn in its application to the history of art. So, historicism. So, he was didactic, but it was characterized by historicism. It was seeped in history also. So this question asks us, it can be inferred from the passage that Shaw would probably agree with all of the following except which one? He wrote out of moral passion. We can attest to this because it is mentioned in the first paragraph. All of his plays are out of date. He agreed that things go, they lose their relevance in time. He was a greater artist than Marlowe. Yes, the role of Marlowe, but in a better way, so that people can come and make his ideas, tentative ideas, into masterpieces. But he was the most profound and original thinker of his epoch. I don't think we don't have data for this. He never thought that I'm the most deep thinker and I'm the most original, authentic thinker. We don't. It's a can't say situation. It's not false, but it's a can't say situation. Right. Which of the following does the author cite as a contradiction in Shaw? You will find the answer here. Shaw, whose essential modesty as disarming as his pose of vanity is disconcerting. So he was modest to the point of disarming you, and then he was proud and pompous to the point of disconcerting you. So clearly, one. As it is revealed in the passage, the author's attitude towards Shaw can best be described as what? What? Condescending? I don't think so, because the author is not doing down or criticizing Shaw. Neutral? No, no. He has used a lot of positive words. A lot of positive words. Yeah. So envious, again, no. Sorry, no, because he doesn't seem to be jealous of the author. He's approving. You know, again and again, that is Shaw's anticipatory challenge to the new orthodoxy of today. So he approves what G.B. Shaw had to say about things. So that's that, guys. That was the passage, and these were the questions. Then I have one passage for you to practice. I am going to stop at. It's a short passage with 4 questions. You can pause the screen and read and attempt the questions one by one. This is question number 1. Question number 2. Question number 3. And finally, question number 4. So these are the questions. Please go ahead and attempt this passage on your own. The answers to these 4 questions you would find in the description box. Keep learning, keep practicing RC, keep challenging yourself to understand more and more difficult RCs. Take good care of yourselves and happy learning. Bye-bye.